talking about a very important topic that should matter to all of us, and that's global warming.
Yeah.
That is why my claim for today is that humans are increasing global warming. Now, there are a lot of people out there who don't believe in global warming because they think it's either a hoax or they say it's something natural. And it is natural because our Earth has changed before and it will change again, but it's a slow process that takes thousands to even millions of years to happen. But what we are doing is we're starting to increase this process of global warming by doing so many things. But for today, I'll only focus on three main things that I think are more impactful in our environment. And the first thing is we're creating unnatural greenhouse gases. The second thing is we are cutting down too many trees. And the last thing is we're polluting our waters. Now let's go to the first thing, which is we're creating unnatural greenhouse gases. Now, greenhouse gases are actually very important for our environment because they help keep in heat. And we need heat to be able to grow things and to survive as well. But what we are doing is we're creating too much greenhouse gases and we're forcing large amounts of this into our atmosphere, causing them to build up and trap in more heat than we need. An article called Climate Change Causes by NASA states that the panel concluded there's a probability of 95% that human-produced greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide have caused much of the observed increase in the Earth's temperatures over the past 50 years. And 40% of that comes from CO2. Now, let's talk about CO2 for a little bit. CO2 is another thing non-believers use because the gas itself doesn't trap in as much heat as the other gases, but that's the one greenhouse gas we produce more of. We do almost everything, well, everything goes through a process that burns some type of fuel, coal, or oil, and this ends up combining carbon with oxygen in the air, creating CO2. Things like cars are something that create CO2. Millions of people all around the world use their cars, so we're producing CO2 a lot. Now the second thing is we're cutting down too many trees. Now trees are vital for our environment because not only are they able to take in CO2 and convert it into oxygen, they're also able to trap in water and clean it as well. And a film called The 11th Hour, which is a documentary about global warming, has talked about how a 10 to 12 inch tree can hold up to 57,000 gallons of water. And that's also very important in times of flooding. Another thing the film talked about is that about 70 countries in the world have lost their old forests, and that is because we're cutting too many of them down without planting any back, and we're also cutting them in ways that prevent other trees to grow. The film talked about how for forests, they become grassland, and for rainforests, the land will become very dry and the nutritional cycle will stop functioning, thus creating deserts. Now we're causing extreme changes because we're cutting down so many trees without doing anything back. Now the last thing that we're doing is we're polluting our ocean waters. We're using it as a big trash can. We dump things like trash and chemicals into it almost every day. An article called Humans' Impact on the Oceans by Outlook stated that trash is one of man's most widespread pollutants. Beaches all around the world become littered with the trash produced by mankind, much of which is disposed of at sea and then floats all around the world in the currents. And this has become a major problem all over like any beach in the world, that in Thailand they had to close down some of their beaches for a couple months to clean it up as well. They also started preventing as much tourists as they used to before. And another thing, an article by NPR about global warming stated that a chemical in our sunscreen called oxybenzoate is the cause of damaging our coral reefs because it strips away the nutrients of the reef and ends up bleaching it white. And this also affects all the other marine life as well. So humans are doing so much to our environment without doing anything to balance it out. Thus, we are increasing global warming. Thank you.
All right, well, the proposition's clearly identified. It works. It's a claim of fact. The contents are previewed for us, so that makes the speech a little bit easier to follow. On the controversy, you'd give us a little bit of information about how, there's kind of a reservation argument about how, yes, the climate changes, but it's changing faster in our context because of human activity. So I thought that that was a reasonable way to maybe generate a little bit of controversy on this. It's probably easier to also talk about how there's resistance to actions that are designed to reduce some of the kinds of pollution that you're talking about. Like I said, you previewed the supporting structure. When you get to that in the body of the speech, you signpost things pretty clearly. Your information on the first point is about, it's very general about the relationship of greenhouse gases and what's going on in the atmosphere. That there's a contribution to it. You've got that nice, statistical quote from NASA that suggests that there is a relationship here. I think that that's a pretty good piece of information, although the question about how much of it is one of those things that, of course, is part of the contentiousness. There may not be any denial that we produce CO2 by using all kinds of like activities like cars and that sort of thing. But how much of the CO2 that we produce contributes to the global warming. We don't even get any general information on what the rate of warming is, that it has changed in any dramatic way, that the activities of human beings are related for part of the change that's occurred in the last 50 years. That's what the quote says, but it doesn't tell us how much change there's been. And that really, I think, is a missing piece of information in the speech that's kind of important. The second argument about cutting down the trees, well, you did have a piece of factual data about the number of countries that have lost forests. How significant or widespread that is, we don't know. The total number of trees, there's not any information on. What percentage of the tree coverage that we once had have we lost? I think that would be something that would help make your argument a little bit stronger. And of course, the bigger part is that all of the tree cutting is related to human activity, that it's being cut down for to create grazing land or to create areas for people to live or to utilize the resources of lumber, that kind of thing. That's kind of left in the background, and I think it would be a good thing to include that in that particular process. On the third point on pollution in the ocean, there's not really a very clear explanation about how pollution in the ocean affects climate. And when you got to that piece of information about the sunscreen additive that kills the coral reefs, okay, well, I know that why that might be bad for the ocean, but there's not an explanation about why that's bad for global warming. And there may very well be a link, but it's not explained here in the argument, so I think that that's a little bit problematic. You do a nice job speaking to the audience. I think you build a lot of credibility that way. I just think that you're missing, maybe some more information that would sell your point a little bit more and connect it a little bit more clearly, especially on that third point. All right, thank you.